Happy Thursday, everybody. When is a clown not a clown? When it's a mailman. These are the things that we've learned before we went live tonight. This is Night Terrors Radio. I'm Ash at Morfix.com. I've got Steve Thompson Taylor, Ricky Farrell, and Samantha. What's your last name, Samantha?
I'm not telling.
God, never get about your true identity. It was a test. This was all a test. We've got PJ Starks and Eric Huskisson.
There you go.
With us tonight, and we're gonna have a lot of fun just watching the two of them bicker. More than likely, we'll probably shut off our cameras, let them take it over, and I'm totally
we're good at that.
I'm tired. It's gonna be a great night, nonetheless. Though we're gonna talk about holiday horrors, we're gonna talk about New Year's Eve. We're gonna talk about some old projects PJ and Eric have been involved with, and we will have ourselves a grand old time. So, how has everyone been this week? Any huge announcements? Anything that's happened? Any surgeries? Inpatient, outpatient? Anything?
I'm pregnant.
Yeah. And it's not mine. Thank
Finally.
God.
Congratulations.
No, Eric pulls out.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, after a while, about the 12th round of in vitro, they're like, PJ, you do know why you're not getting pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Look, I just like to go to the gynecologist. I mean, so sue me.
But please make out the check to the guy behind the dumpster burger kitchen. So we do have a lot to talk about tonight. As always, we do usually start with a little bit of news, and Steve's going to take over that news tonight in lieu of Rob not being around. You got that queued up, Steve, or are we just going to have an awkward period of silence?
No.
All right. Without further ado. They call that production value, kids. We have bumpers.
Love it. And of course, Florida man never fails. So this happened just a couple days ago in Southwest
By the
Florida.
way, we don't really do any other news besides what happens in Florida. That's it.
Just Florida, man.
You don't really need any other news.
No,
right.
And it usually waits too. So sometimes this is about 16 minutes of your day. So go ahead.
Yeah,
Perfect.
it happens. But the Florida man, and the headline's pretty good. It leaves a lot to wonder what happened. Florida man accused of attacking nurse, stripping naked, and flooding emergency room.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack. Yes. Let's see here.
Okay, let's take it one step at a time. So naked Florida man, we're all familiar with this.
Right.
Yeah, that's common.
9 times out of 10, they are unclothed. So naked Florida man. Let's get the rest of that. What happened?
He was not a patient. So the Southwest Florida man is accused of attacking nurse, stripping his clothes off before flooding the hospital's emergency room. I'm
going to say this right out of the gate. I automatically assumed he wasn't a patient.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would he be?
This is some horrible act of urban espionage.
He came into the waiting room. He's a 53-year-old man, came into the waiting room, agitated, then barged into the emergency room, pushed a patient, and then pushed a nurse in the head. After the hospital staff got him in a room in an effort to keep him from disturbing other patients, he took off his clothes, pulled a high-pressure water pipe from the wall, and flooded the emergency room.
I don't know why this all makes sense to me.
Sounds like a Saturday night. Sounds like a Saturday night for PJ.
I was going to say, of course he flooded the emergency room because he came in there.
Yeah.
Were you in Florida, PJ?
No.
I'm not apologizing on his behalf tonight. I'm not doing
it. That rim shot audio.
So can you say where in Florida this happened?
It was in Naples at North Collier Hospital.
Wow.
They're very proud.
They used a taser on him. That could have been deadly with the flood.
Yeah.
Where others would have all their information redacted, that hospital was like, come at us.
No, yeah, they've got his name.
We're owning this. We're owning what happened.
You
Yeah.
never
Oh.
know what's going to be on the news anymore.
At least he didn't eat anyone's face.
No, that's true.
Not
This
yet.
And there weren't drugs involved that we know of, so
That we know of.
Yeah.
Although
you
this
got to put that
this
in there
does
because it sounds
stink.
like there might have been drugs involved.
This does stink of a few party favors, in my opinion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
somebody was pre-gaming. Just
Something's going on there. You're right.
tiny bit. So now that we've got through our news, that took less than 6. Usually, this goes well beyond half of the show.
Right.
As our guests just sit there wondering why they're here, because it takes so long for us to get through our Florida Man news. We have a couple great guests lined up tonight. So you're both associated with Blood Moon Pictures, correct? So if I
Yes.
say that, you won't just look at me funny like I didn't do any research at all. Eric Huskisson, PJ Starks, with us tonight. Responsible for such films as Volumes of Blood, the upcoming New Fear's Eve, 13 Slaves of Christmas. Whole hell of a lot going on, guys. How have you been?
Good.
Good.
And busy as always, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
guys always have something going
Yeah.
on.
Oh yeah. That's it. Well, it never slows down, but that's our fault. So we can't complain about it.
We're in post production. You would think it would be like you could take a little bit of a breath and relax, but I haven't relaxed any. So
No,
Oh, no.
me neither.
That's familiar.
No, though. This is when I get the ulcers, is post production.
yeah.
On top of the ulcers that I got during pre and then during production. So
Right.
you guys are responsible for quite a few films. I've actually known PJ for a while, maybe too long.
I'm surprised that you admit that.
It
Yeah,
took
you're,
a little
you're
bit.
still talking to him.
Yeah, I'm your Florida man.
That was a note that I had highlighted with a bunch of question marks by it. It was a do or die, but I went through with it anyways.
Well, I'm glad you
But
stuck around.
But yeah, like way back in the day, when you were first starting this incredible journey, PJ, I was around trying, I guess, to start my own, or whatever the hell you'd call it. But so you kept at it because a lot of people don't. So
Well, I'm too stupid to give up. That's the thing.
just
And then Eric
glutton for abuse.
and Eric wanted this too, so I was like, "Yes, let's do this together." And now he fully regrets it.
Now, are you two like lifelong friends? Because you bicker as if you are.
No.
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 We've known each other for 10 years.
So okay. So let's set the stage. You guys met at a USO dance, right? Lots of
You would
swing
think.
music.
Now, Eric, I get.
Just trying
How-
to beat the shit out of somebody.
How old do you think I am?
Well, they still hold USO shows. You know that, right? Which is crazy. Like they still hold these They're still like a USO organization, and they hold shows. So like Afghanistan, for instance, right? The USO will put on these huge comedy shows for the troops, and they'll
Right.
fly these talent over there. So I didn't know that until like a few years ago when somebody was like, "No, the USO," and I'm like, from the Steven Spielberg movie, because that's everything that I know is from a movie or something. It can't be from a book. It's got to
Right.
be from a movie. And they were like, no, the USO still puts on these huge productions for the troops. So you guys were at a USO dance. Continue.
Technically, we were just at a dance. It was in my basement.
Okay. Sadie
Yeah.
Hawkins.
We
You guys
met.
are
Look,
dressed very similarly.
we met on Grinder, but it was not the kind of. I thought it was a food app, and Eric thought it was. So he was trying to hook up, but I was
Right.
trying to get a sub sandwich.
Right, because you thought it was hoagies and Grinder.
Right, and then he shows up and he's delivering the meat, but it didn't go the way he had hoped.
Right. And you notice why he can never pick the package up above his belly button.
I should not have taken a drink.
And you're like, this is the absolute worst Halloween costume I've ever seen.
Either Eric is frozen, I'm assuming with delight.
He's multiplying, that's for sure. We've got
Yeah,
two.
I think
So somebody either threw water on him or fed him after midnight, but Yeah, Eric is-
Both.
it's just multiply.
I'm sure it's his wife. No, so the long and the short of it is
Now we're
back
to the
in
Grinder story.
right. So back in 2013, I had started this event at the library called Unscripted. It's still going on today, only I stepped away to focus on films. We were doing a zombie night, and Eric showed up, and he did a really good job with his makeup. And at the time, I was doing some like freelance work for a local radio station here called WBKR, and they were doing a zombie run video. So when I saw his makeup, I was like, "Hey, I've got this promo I'm doing for them coming up. Would you be interested in doing this again and be a zombie in the video?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." So we kind of talked a little bit, and then we became friends on Facebook, stayed in touch. He showed up to set. We filmed the promo and everything. And I mean, Eric and I just hit it off like immediately.
Mhm.
And so as we're getting ready to leave, at the time, I was also co-coordinating the film festival at Scarefest in Lexington. And I was like, "Hey, I've got this event coming up. I need help. Would you be interested in coming along and being a part of that?" And he said, "Absolutely." So he came and helped me out at that event. And I mean, it was like just instantly we were like best friends.
Right.
And so by the time the weekend was over with, he was like, "This is a blast. I want to keep being a part of this stuff and all that." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. I always need help and everything." Unscripted became Volumes of Blood. That's what opened the doors because it was all done through the Davis County Public Library, and Unscripted was going so well, like they were having to use their backup room because it was like an event that was bringing 80 people to the library to like see these short films and stuff. So it was a huge.
And was the library in full support of that? I mean, was the community sort of, behind you?
The community, no. That's the surprising thing. We haven't fully gotten the amount of support we feel like it. I mean, it sounds kind of the way I say that we feel like we deserve until we started doing New Fear's Eve.
Completely. Which is one of the reasons I'm asking.
Yeah. So with Unscripted, the library, yes, the guy at the time, Jim Blanton, who was running the library, was not from Owensboro, and he was very much into putting himself out there and trying new and different, unique things. So when I approached him with the idea for Unscripted, he was like, "Oh, I love that idea. Let's give it a shot." So we did a 6-week series, and I mean, it went over like gangbusters. So he's like, "Man, we got to do this again." So it was like by the 3rd series of Unscripted, PBS was covering it and all this other stuff. So he was like, "Hey, I really want to do something bigger and better. So let's do like an unscripted film school." So we did that, where we brought regional filmmakers in to like do this event where they shot 2 films simultaneously, and that went really well. So then at the time, like I had been doing a film festival in Owensboro, which had Peter Weller was our like headliner and everything, and I was doing Unscripted, and at that point I felt like a glorified wedding planner. And at this point, like Eric and I were working together on different things. Like he was like fully invested
like
in
the horror world, right?
Right. Just
Isn't
not
she
as
a wedding
successful.
planner in 3 out of 4 for films.
Maybe
Her contractual obligation.
Yeah, but I'm not as attractive. I don't have my ass isn't as voluptuous as hers, and
No, I mean
I'm nowhere near as successful and probably never will be as J-Lo. But I appreciate the sentiment. But anyway, so long and the short of it, that all of that led the indie film school led to me pitching the idea for Volumes of Blood, because I at that point I wanted to get away from events and go back into making film, because like that's where my heart was. So I approached Jim and I said, "Hey, what if instead of doing like 2 short films on one night, what if we do a series of short films over a period of months, and then we open up like a public registration process where people from the outside can come in and be production assistants and see what it's like to make a movie?" And He was like, "I love that idea." So then what we did so we made Volumes of Blood, and at that point, Eric was on board, and we were pretty much partners on everything. I mean, he was an incredible help during that process. He wasn't producing yet. I was the main producer and kind of did a lot of the logistics, but I mean, he helped with the majority of it, helped on set and all that. So then Volumes of Blood gets out there, does far better than any of us anticipated. And then at that point, Eric was like, "Hey, if there was the talk about doing another movie, doing a sequel, which Volumes of Blood Horror Stories was that." Eric's like, "Hey, what if we partnered up fully and and did this the right way, make a company?" So in 2015, in December of 2015, we started Blood Moon Pictures together, and then moved directly into Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, and here we are today. The rest is history. Several projects later.
Now, Eric, because I spoke quite a bit more with PJ than I ever have you. What were you doing previous to getting into Volumes of Blood, getting into Unscripted? What were you doing previous to that? Had you been in the industry in any capacity?
No, when I was much younger, I had always been into horror, but basically because of special effects. I dabbled in around here. There wasn't any avenue. I'm talking 30 plus years ago. So I got into theater in high school, and there was, behind the scenes doing sets, acting. And I became a theater major and went to Western Kentucky University as a theater major, and got down there, and it was a whole different world than it was what I was used to here. My comfort level went away, kind of walked away from that. And I just stayed busy with jobs and going to school. And I was still a fan. I did some odd jobs for some theater people from behind the scenes, helping with lighting and doing all their curtain calls and stuff like that. Worked with some theater here. So I dabbled a little bit here and there. And then I got married, kid, and still into the horror movies, but I wasn't doing anything. And then the Unscripted was seen by a friend of mine, and we were getting ready to go to Chicago Comic-Con. And I was like, "Well, man, let's both dress up." It was the zombie night, I'm sure. Sorry, I went away, but I'm back. Long story. But I said, "Why don't we dress up like zombies?" Because he had done zombie makeup as well. I said, "Maybe we can win some money for a Chicago trip." And he didn't want to do it, and I did. And it caught PJ's eye that night. And we kind of talked afterwards and swapped numbers. And then, I don't know, it was a week or two later, he called me up and was like, "Hey, man, I got this thing with the radio station. I need a zombie. You want to do it?" And, man, I just got hook, line, and sinker watching PJ and all the stuff he was doing. And the day he had told us earlier, the day that we did the zombie run video, afterwards we talked, and he was going to Scarefest. And what he didn't say earlier that I was saying was kind of not the exact truth, that I basically said, "Hey, man, if you need any help," I just wanted to do anything. He's, "Well, yeah, you could come help once you come along." And the ride up and the ride back and our time together, we just became friends. And now I'm doing what I wanted to do a long time ago. But years ago, I will be honest, years ago, back in 99, I almost went to Full Sail down in Florida. Signed up, ready to go. I was going to pursue it. I didn't care what happened to me. If I made it, I made it. If I didn't, I didn't. And a company here that I had applied for, good job, good pay, good retirement, benefits, all that. Week before I was leaving, called me up and was like, "Hey, your application's still on file. The guy that got the job over you moved up. You can still come to interview." And I got the job. Mm-hmm. And dollar signs ruled my world. So at the time, but luckily I ran into PJ. So
Full Sail is my alma mater. That's where I went from.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I still wish I'd went, but I might not be where I'm at today. So
the great
but
thing
I
is
do.
you would have a crippling amount of debt, such as I did.
Well, I'm glad I didn't go then.
When did you go to Full Sail?
Oh, geez, this was 2006 to 2009.
Oh shit! So I moved to Florida to go to Full Sail in 2004, but I was going to wait a year to become a resident. so then the tuition was going to be less.
Mhm.
So you and I almost went to Full Sail together. That's interesting.
And I was barely there for any time at all until they put my entire curriculum online. And then I was like, well, fuck it. I'm moving.
Right.
which would not be the only time that I had done that, as I had also went to Colorado and I went to school there, but only for about a year. So yeah, basically just a vagabond. That's
a friend of mine's son.
Half student, half
go ahead. Sorry.
vagabond nomad. Go right ahead.
Yeah, a friend of mine's son just graduated from Full Sail, moved back to Owensboro, and his mom told me he was back and he graduated to look him up, and I forgot to tell you that, PJ.
When you found out he moved back to Owensboro, were you like, it's good to see his education worked out for him?
No, I mean, I don't necessarily know that he's staying here or what he's doing. Shut up, I'm talking. But anyway, just letting you know.
Yeah, great story.
Say we all almost went to Full Sail. Well, you did.
Well, but I almost did, but by the end of the fourth hurricane, which was Charlie, the house I was living in got destroyed. So it's funny because when I left Owensboro, I was like, later, fuckers. You'll never see me again. And then I turned around and walked out. And then I was like, I walked right back in the door and I was like, so can I get my job back? And yeah, I came back with my tail tucked. But the one thing, so I worked at Universal Studios and I was in VIP Tours, and VIP Tours was in the production side. So our office, we shared that with all the producers and the visual effects people, like all their offices and stuff were right there. So I got to kind of like hobnob with some of them. And while I was there, I had made a movie before I left, which is terrible. And I'm embarrassed that I gave it to them, but I gave one of the producers there because I kept bugging her. I'm like, yes, I really want to be a filmmaker and da 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 da. So I gave her a copy of this movie, which is like, it's terrible. But you have to start somewhere.
Have a copy of that movie, PJ?
Yeah, it's right up there.
Okay. I'll give him a mailing address after the show.
But anyway, so so she gave me some she wasn't like, oh, this is a piece of shit, I can't believe you gave this to me. She was really nice about it, and she gave me her constructive criticisms. So when I moved back, I took that to heart, and then I was like, well, you know,
with the pamphlet, you're about to enter the world of accounting.
Right, yeah. She was like, so you want to flip burgers, huh? Yeah, but luckily I was working at a TV station when I left, so when I turned around and came back, I got my old job back at the TV station, so I got to go right back into what I love to do and what I was good at. So I just kept pushing forward, and at that point I was like, well, I'm probably gonna be stuck here for the rest of my life, so might as well make the best of it. And I was like, why? I don't really, and that's the other thing too, like I have no desire to live in LA. I have no desire to live in New York or any of these other big cities. I like living in a place where I can get from one side of town to the other in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm just going to try to be a filmmaker here. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then at least I tried to do something. And
he just can't think of the thought of leaving me.
That's it. I'll see you in your bedroom tonight.
Yeah. Go ahead. If you guys can't quit
From
each
the
other,
corner.
who might have judged?
Well, and not in a sexy way. I'm just going to stand in the corner and stare at him while he sleeps and masturbate furiously.
How is that not sexy?
Well, okay, good question.
And that's not nightly, but it is weekly.
Well,
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Nightly's too
Hey,
much. That's overkill.
It's nowhere near as bad as Eric. He's the sleep jacker. So
That's right. That's a long story. That isn't true what it sounds like.
real quick though, and I'd have to find I'd have to find these photos. But when we were making Volumes of Blood horror stories, I told everybody behind the scenes that I was like, if you ever have to go on a trip with Eric, don't, because I was like, I can't tell you how many times I'll wake up in the middle of the night and look down and he's just masturbating me, and I don't want him to. And I would sit there and I would like go through the motions and I would make this face, and our on-set photographer would always take his camera and take a picture of me. So there's like 3 or 4 photos of me like going like that,
And that's
somewhere in the background. Yeah. So New Fear's Eve.
Yes.
Great
Please
transition.
change the subject.
Right. So we have this Indiegogo campaign going on right now. And if you like infantile humor the way we do, you should help support us. Do what?
We had to wade through a bunch of involuntary masturbation to get to this point.
Right.
So we're here. So let's relish it. So let's talk about New Fear's Eve.
Good. Yes.
This is called the hard segue. Let's talk about New Fear's Eve.
Let's.
So tell us a little bit about the inception of the project, what you guys are currently doing. So give us the details on it.
Okay, so where it began was we were making so it was during 13 Sleighs Till Christmas. The reason we made that movie was because we had so much fun making the Christmas segment on horror stories that it spawned an idea with me to do 13 Sleighs, and then Eric was like, yeah, we should do that. So then during 13 Sleighs, I'm just driving along one day, and I'm always coming up with movie ideas. Eric can attest to this. He says I've gotten better about it, but I would always like text him or call him or send him an email and be like, oh, here's an idea. There's an idea. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah. And so one day I'm just driving my car, and I was like, New Fear's Eve is kind of a cool title. So sometimes I'll come up with like a concept and then think of a title. Sometimes I'll come up with a title and then flesh out the concept. So came up with the title, and then I was like, well, what's the story to that? And originally it was supposed to be an anthology. But then I approached him with the idea of 13 Sleighs, or not 13 Sleighs, but with New Fear's Eve, and it was supposed to be an anthology. And he's like, well, let's get through 13 Sleighs first, and then we'll talk about whatever it is that, we're going to do next. So put New Fear's Eve on the shelf. And then by the time it came to do New Fear, or at least for us to discuss it and me to write the script and everything, a lot of stuff had transpired at that point. Like I lost my grandmother, who I was super close to at the end of 13 Sleighs, like right before it came out. And she's the whole reason why, like, I'm even interested in horror. And then of course, there's just the pandemic in general. We all went through that together. Then, I ended up getting a divorce from my wife of almost 20 years. And so there's like a whole lot of life stuff that went through, and I was going through all this anxiety and all this other stuff. So
Cue the violins.
shut your face. So we, yes, please feel sorry for me. As we all know, all good stories come out of tragedy. So that's, that means New Year's Eve is going to be amazing. But no, so long and the short of it is we realized we wanted to go in a different direction, and we wanted to do something that was a feature narrative versus, because you're only going to get better at what you do if you try to push yourself and you do something a little bit bigger and a little bit better every time. And we knew that for us, the direction to go was to be a feature, not another anthology. So what I did was I started fleshing out the idea, and now that it was a feature narrative, I used a lot of my personal shit that I went through as the groundwork for what the dichotomy was for the characters, the main characters, and kind of their through line. And then, I mean, so I came up with the idea, pitched it to Eric. Eric said, yeah, I really like that. Start writing it. Then I procrastinated, and he kept bugging me. He's like, when are you going to write it? When are you going to write it? And then I finally sat down to write it. And initially it was supposed to be a pretty straightforward horror film. But when I sat down and started writing it, I'm the type of individual that I use levity to process and deal with serious things. So it was like, after 9/11, I was making like Twin Tower jokes and stuff, which for some people was, they weren't thrilled with those, but it's like that was how I processed certain things. I've gotten better about it. But anyway, so as I'm writing this story, it just became more and more humorous, not necessarily in the situations, but it was through the dialogue. So then wrote the script, gave it to Eric. Eric read it, then called me and was like, I thought we were making a horror film. This is like way funnier than I realized it was good. Like, there's more comedy here, it feels like, than anything. And it's got a good mix, but there is a lot of like comedy driven dialogue throughout the film. So that's why it ended up being a horror comedy. And there's a lot of like extremely personal stuff that's in the trailer, the joke about the vasectomy. I mean, I've gone through a botched vasectomy. So it's like, yeah, I was able to take all these like real life situations and
Can you talk about that for the rest of the show?
What, the botched vasectomy?
Yes, please.
Here's what I'll tell you about a botched vasectomy. It makes your penis at least 8 inches long. And
I wouldn't call that a botched vasectomy. I'd call that extremely successful.
I'm kidding.
So
It actually
what
shaved a
happened?
few off.
What happened? Like, did you go in and they were like, was the guy drunk?
No.
Or...
Okay, so once again, when you watch the trailer, a lot of this is in the movie, like in the trailer, that these parts. But I went to
I thought you could say the words botched vasectomy and we would just pass it over
Right.
like it was nothing. We'd just be
He
like,
does this shit on purpose.
Okay.
He does this shit on purpose, so I'll never get a word in.
Well, what you have to say is people want to hear about what I have to say anyway. Yeah. So you're just eye candy. So what happened was, on a more serious note. So at the time, Trina, that's my ex-wife, she was, I almost said high functioning. Sorry. My oldest has autism, but she was high risk. Right. So, we actually lost 2 kids, like pretty far along. And we tried one more time. She actually, after the second one, Nolan, I was like, not doing it anymore. Fuck that. I'm done. I'm not trying to have any more kids. It's too hard to deal with that. I'm not burying another child. So she convinced me to try one more time. And then after my neighbor knocked her up, that was a joke. So we got pregnant with Connor, had Connor. I still say that part is a joke. But we had Connor. He's perfectly fine. He's very much my child. If you look at pictures of like my dad when he was 6 and Connor when he was the same age, they're identical looking. So genetically, I'm about 84% sure he's mine. So
that's good.
Yeah.
And force good.
But anyway, so we had Connor, and then after that, I was like, I'm not going. We had our miracle child, not going through this again. She said, "Yep, not going through this again." So I said, "Look, I'll get a vasectomy because for you, it's a surgery, so it's more dangerous for the woman to go through it, and for us, it's just like snip, snip, and it's you're up and." Well, walking.
Not for all of us.
No,
They had to knock me out completely because the second he got close to my balls, I almost fainted. And he said, "Well, we're just going to put you out then."
Oh, well, you're lucky because I wished I'd been put out. When I had the vasectomy, it was the single. It felt like he pulled my vas deferens out and stabbed a fork into my vas deferens. That's what it felt like. But anyway, so I went to my general practitioner, and it was like $75 to get this vasectomy done.
Those are bargain basement prices.
Right. And when he cut the first one, he even pulled out the piece and showed me. He's like, "Look at that." and it looked like a macaroni noodle, like a Kraft macaroni and cheese noodle, uncooked.
I don't think there was a real doctor, PJ, but
Uncooked, of course. And then he went,
And it was real macaroni. He was
That's
taking him
right.
out.
He had actually had a little pot that was on a burner. He was like, watch this. And he threw it in there with a bunch of other macaroni. He was like, you'll never know it's in there.
Was this in an alley?
Maybe. Dumpster alley.
There's glue in there, and it was like it's a sense.
No, it was actually in my doctor's office, who ironically had to close down his practice because he went legally blind. And that was like a year after my vasectomy. So what ended up happening is I went to a general practitioner. I had my vasectomy. Everything seemed fine.
He pulled a bunch of ramen noodles out of you.
Right. And then about a year after, well, no, I take that back. Well, about a year and a half, 2 years after that, I felt like garbage. It was like I had no energy. I had no libido, nothing. And I was like, something's definitely wrong with me. So I went to my new doctor. Or no, I take that back. He wasn't blind yet. So I went to him and he's like, oh yeah, you got low testosterone. So then I had to start getting testosterone injections. So yeah.
This is a wicked web.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know
and
this is going to go on and on until we run out of time.
Right. Oh, we got all the time in the world. So yeah, so that's in the movie. My divorce is in the movie.
I give him a vasectomy in the movie.
So
actually, what's funny is there's full blown conversations that Trina and I had throughout the process of like certain things transpiring, and then us getting into arguments and all that, to the point where after Eric read the script, he came to me and he was like, "Dude, are you sure you want some of this stuff in there? Like, is she not going to get mad?" Or, you know, it was like, so he was like questioning some, and I was like, here's the thing. I mean, first of all, I didn't care. But secondly, it's like,
they call him an ex-wife for a reason.
Right. So it was like, but the thing was, it was true to real life, and it made for great drama and back and forth between certain characters in the movie. And it added more like layers and gravitas and stuff to the story. So writers write what they know. And I had a whole lot, to pull out of the tank, so I used it.
So what went wrong during the vasectomy? Was it narrowed?
As far as I knew, nothing.
Okay.
I mean, although I will, so you're supposed to.
But you keep calling it a botched vasectomy. Why? Why was it botched?
Oh, okay. Now, well, I think I say botched because I think the fact that I ended up having issues with my testosterone, where my body stopped producing it, was because of the vasectomy. Like after a vasectomy, your testicles should still work and you should still produce testosterone. Right. But somehow after my vasectomy, not only that, but I've had testicular atrophy since then. So they're like shriveled up raisins. And, you know, so now I'm all wiener.
I was going to say,
he's always been all wiener.
I keep trying to find the downside in this botched vasectomy story.
Sideways now.
You were trying to find the downside?
Oh, if he did, trust me, he would tell you about it.
There's a really old joke here about a guy whose eyelids were repaired with his foreskin, but I won't go into it.
Yes, I remember that joke.
Yeah, I don't know where to go from there, but
he was a little.
For me, the downside is the testosterone, because the issue with the testosterone is that it's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. If I don't take my testosterone, my heart works harder, so it's going to kill me eventually. But because I'm taking the testosterone, I now have to take like Crestor and stuff, because testosterone, introducing it the way you do into your system in like a full blast. You can ask Eric. You can ask Eric later about full blasts, and then what'll happen is that builds up in your it builds up. What's the word I'm looking for? Plaque, right? It builds up plaque. So now I have to take medicine to stop plaque buildup in my arteries. Right. I have to take medicine to stop semen buildup in my arteries. to to prevent myself. So it's like, if I don't take my testosterone, it's going to kill me. Taking the testosterone is slowly killing me anyway, right? So
Right.
that's where it's a downside. But the
wake up,
upside
you know,
is,
and just say to yourself, like, today's a big semen day.
well, it's funny you say that, because the upside is it's cream pie city.
It's just fraud and ejaculate
I need more
everywhere.
females in here.
I wish I had known where this was going and I wouldn't have joined the whole thing, but I'm glad I'm here.
Look, yeah.
Well,
That
now
was probably, that's probably too far, but at least you're getting a good dose of the type of comedy and what to expect in New Fear's Eve.
Our conversation
Oh, yeah.
is well-rounded this evening. I also do want to ask Eric about Full Blast because of the pantomime you did with your hands.
Oh, that was just a joke. There's no story behind that.
Oh, okay.
I don't.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
Probably-
tell us about your botch vasectomy story.
Yeah. So he used the word botch just to throw drama in there so somebody would bring it up so he could talk about his privates, which he loves to do all the time. And therefore it happened, it worked, and now we're still talking about it.
But
I
it
understand.
sounds
That's
like
right.
this old guy that obviously was shy 20 on his 20/20 vision was just trying to disarm a bomb down there. He's like, is it the red wire? Is it the blue wire?
I have heard
every wire.
I've heard every
cut.
story about everything that's happened in his life 30 freaking times, if not 100 freaking times. It's so old.
But you
I could bring up 10 or 12 other things and y'all be like, what? Oh, let's talk about that. Because he makes it an issue. He makes it an issue so he can talk about himself. It's true.
I roll.
However, I like this idea though of injecting some of that injecting some of that.
I was wondering where I heard a different word, but yeah.
But a lot of the real world scenarios is stuff that often we don't get in horror writing. I mean, horror writing, let's face it, a big bulk of horror writing is just to propel scenes forward. You know, we've got gags that we want to use. We're looking for a particular ending. We've got some shock moments. And then we sort of fill the rest of that with exposition on how to get there. But when we do find the script that has a lot of that very human dialogue in it, you know, those are sort of diamonds in the rough as far as the genre is concerned. You know, which doesn't make me love the genre any less. I love the stories that are entirely focused on gore, entirely and focused on the ABCs of how to get to a grisly ending. But I also like those films that are more dialogue driven too. So I do think that's, you know, an interesting approach. And now, did you find that was something that you felt you could do now because you've done films before and this sort of felt more organic, or do you second guess yourself? A lot of writers second guess themselves when they start to do some dialogue driven stuff.
I mean, I second guess myself all the time. Eric will probably tell you that I have too much of an ego to second guess myself, but I do. I mean, I'll do when I do what's called the vomit pass. I mean, it's just, you know, putting stuff down. And, I mean, there was stuff that I had to go back. I went through maybe 5 different versions of the script through rewrites before it was like the final draft. A bulk of the dialogue driven scenes, those pretty much stayed the same, because to me, those were the core elements of what, like you said, drove the story forward. And that's the interesting thing. Like when we were first like promoting the movie and getting the initial campaign and stuff out there, like Dave Sheridan had come on the project as a producer at that point. And one of the things that he really pushed was or stressed was, call it just a horror film. Don't call it a horror comedy, because a lot of horror fans get turned off by the idea of horror and comedy mixed together. So like on the campaign, there wasn't anything that said it was a comedy.
Mhm.
However, I didn't want to say it wasn't a comedy. So any kind of promotions and stuff that we did outside that, or if I talked about it on social media, I called it a horror comedy because it is. Now to me, I think it's a good balance because the comedy is almost entirely regulated to the dialogue. But when it's the horror elements with the doctor and all those the moments where it's supposed to be tense or scary or thrilling or whatever, those moments are all pretty much taken pretty seriously. Like we don't really make fun of the doctor because he's a silent killer. So he's a Jason Voorhees or a Michael Myers. So to us, it was doing it a disservice, the character a disservice, if we were to try to make him into a joke. So for all of his scenes, you know, he's very brutal. He's very straightforward. I mean, so Jesse McDonald, who plays when he came into the fold and he's the actor who plays, he brought a lot of nuance and gave the character a lot of personality through his body language and stuff. So he did bring a lot to the character, but as far as like the story driven stuff, that all pretty much, but then a lot of, you know, some of the kills changed, some of the scenes in between, the original script was actually 126 pages long. And then by the time I got to the final draft, I cut it down to like 94 pages or something like that. So there was a lot of fat that got trimmed out of there. I can say this,
and more got added.
There was a couple things that got added because of death scenes and stuff that we ended up ultimately putting into the film. But for me as a writer, to me, what the true test is Jeffrey Reddick, so he's on the project, he acts in the film. But of course, before he was like, yes, like, so we worked together on 13 Slaves Till Christmas, and you know, he would talk to me and say, you know, I really want to do something where I come there and I'm on set with you and we're actually like in the fray together and everything. He was like, so whatever you guys end up doing next, like, I want to know about it. I want to be more involved. So then when the time came and I reached out to him, I said, hey, so this is what our next project is. Of course he wants to read the script. And then I have to send it to him. So I was on pins and needles because, you know, the guy not only created like one of the most well-known horror franchises, but it's like the log truck is something that has just transcended the last 20 years of pop culture. I mean, there's people who, when they see a log truck, or even if they don't know what Final Destination is, like they're familiar with the idea of like why a log truck is a bad thing.
Right.
And
yeah.
that's all because of Jeffrey. So like sending him the script, I was a nervous wreck because I was worried he was going to read it and think, well, this sucks, you know, and then what do I, it's like, what do I say to that? Right now, Jeffrey's like the sweetest, kindest person ever. So I didn't really think he would say, oh, this sucks. But anyway, so when he called to say, here are my thoughts about the script, I mean, he was super complimentary. He's like, man, I got to tell you, he goes, the story's great. It's funny. He goes, right out of the gate, you've managed to take these three characters and make them so endearing and to where you care about them right away. So then by the time things get serious, you're really worried about their safety. And he goes, that a lot of writers, they can't do that. And he goes, but you've managed to really, you know, there's a lot of heart here. There's a lot of soul here. And there's a lot of good kills and a lot of good scares. And I was just like blown away. However, he goes, it's a bit long, 126 pages, pretty healthy. So he was the one that really pushed to have it trimmed down, that like the fat taken out. And he made some suggestions and things, and Eric made some suggestions. So then by the time we got through the fifth draft, I'd cut it down to like 94 pages. And like Eric said, a couple things did get added back in there. But for me, that was one of the cooler moments, was having Jeffrey give the script so much kudos. Because, I mean, the guy's written a ton of stuff, and he's a good writer. So it surprised me, but it relieved me at the same time.
Yeah, this movie isn't a scary movie. It's not like when we talk about horror comedy, it is not a scary movie. It's got a good mix, like you said. I kind of call it like American Pie meets Michael Myers. You got your everyday life, normal conversations with comedy thrown in, but when it's time for it to be serious and the character building and all that, that's what's going on. And like you said, when the doctor's in there, it's serious. But the normal everyday life of people, I mean, that's where the comedy's at. It's not a slapstick like scary movies are at all. It's just got a good mix thrown in there where it needs to be to lighten up some areas. So some of it's probably going to make you laugh pretty hard. I was thinking a couple of scenes, but yeah, I try to say it's not a scary movie. Don't expect that when you hear horror comedy.
So one thing that we usually ask people, and this is something that we do almost every show, especially when we have filmmakers on, is I'm always interested because of the amount of films that I see, which is a lot. Is that occasionally you'll hit a film that will sort of like revitalize your interest in the industry. I mean, you can see a lot of good films, and those are films that you recognize for good writing, good direction. But a film will come along and you'll watch it and go, wow, I wish I would have done that. Like I wish that, would have been one of the things that I had done. What's one thing that you've seen in the past couple of years that just totally impressed you?
Man, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think of something recent that I've seen that I was like, man, I really wished I had made that.
Not meant to stump anyone.
Oh,
Yeah.
I always
completely
comes along.
see. Anytime I like, I've had this conversation like with other like film lovers, filmmakers and stuff. For me, it's always like, man, I wished I had made Ghostbusters, or I wished I had made The Monster Squad.
Right. Yeah.
There's another film that came out with, I would say, within the last like 10 to 15 years. It was called Jack Brooks' Monster Slayer.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I loved that movie. I was like, man, I wished I had made this movie. What
about you, Eric? Anything popping in your head? Anything coming to mind?
No, I just the only thing it's when I see a effects or a certain kill in a movie, I'm like, oh man, that was, I love anything that's got that originality to it that I see, but anything that I can't. To completely fulfill your question, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Now, of course, a half hour after we're done, I'm going to go, bing, oh, man.
There it was. Were there any movies that maybe started it all, that started that love of horror?
For me?
Yeah.
Oh, God, man. I probably couldn't name probably half of them, but every freaking B movie from back in the day that Elvira and all of them had on. That's how I got started. My dad saw me like watching these, and he's like, he couldn't believe I was watching them.
The late night horror films.
Yeah, but so when he saw that I enjoyed them, he would let me stay up late. And he would stay up with me, and so just anything that had special effects in it, whether it was there might be sci-fi, but it was mostly horror, like the old Fly, anything, the old Bela Lugosi, any of the Lon Chaney, right. Any of those real old ones back in the day, the Werewolf, the classics that just fascinated me. And as time went along, when Phantasm came out, the special effects in that, and the altar world with the little people and the flying thing. And now I look back at some of the special effects in that, and I'm like, good Lord, that's kind of awful. But for the time, it was like, oh my God.
At the time, it was amazing.
And then it just moved along to stuff like The Fog and The Thing. And of course, then Halloween, I was hook, line, and sinker. I was done. But the old classics is what really got me started, just with this. I mean, and special effects weren't heavy, but it was movie magic back then. It really had to be. A lot of it was black and white, and that they didn't have what we have today. But it was just, That's what just kept me glued to it. It wasn't the storyline and anything like that. It was just watching how they did it, basically.
I've been pretty consistently impressed with Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead's work. They're the directly sort of writer combo that did The Endless, Synchronic with Anthony Mackie in it, Something in the Dirt from 2022. But those guys have always sort of consistently managed to put out things that have high strangeness in them. They're very, very weird things that deal with time travel through like over-the-counter drugs, stuff like that. But they do it in a way that's really accessible. It's not so art house. It's a little more mainstream. But if you get a chance, their entire catalog to me is pretty
I
fascinating.
have to check that out because I'm kind of into the weird and bizarre David Lynch, any of that kind of. So yeah, I'll have to check that out.
The Endless from 2017 stands out, I think, is one of their better ones. And again, interesting story, but also a very interesting sort of dichotomy of this relationship that these brothers have, which sort of makes the film. But everything that I've seen of them, I've really, really enjoyed. And I think in 2020, during the pandemic, they decided to bypass the studio stuff and just make a movie with friends, even though they've done, major studio stuff before that, which I found interesting.
Right.
So
Did they do
Yes.
Annihilation?
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
They did a movie called Spring back in 2014, which I think did fairly well in the festival circuit. They did a segment for VHS Viral,
Which ironically is my least favorite of all the VHS movies.
yeah. and they also
Not
worked
saying it's
on-
their fault though. Not saying it's
Right.
them.
And they also worked
Oh,
on
I
a
think
series
you are.
that I really enjoyed. That was, I believe, a Netflix original series called Archive 81.
Mhm.
See, I'm familiar with all the movies. I just haven't seen any of them.
Right.
They're interesting stuff, definitely. So
I've
I
heard
would
two of
recommend-
those. I hadn't heard of any of the others.
Now, where are we at with New Fear's Eve currently? Where does it stand right now?
I'm in the process of editing, so I'm editing the movie. I pretty much, I guess it was Tuesday night is when Monday night I finally got done going through all the audio files. That was one thing that I beat myself up about, because I organized some of the audio, but not all of it. So then by the time we got finished filming, there were hundreds of audio files because you have the actors had lavalier mics on, and of course we had some boom mics, or the boom mic. So I finally had to sit down and go through, but there were hundreds of audio files, and some of them we didn't shut the mic off, so there's clips that are 2 to 3 hours long. So I had to sit down and go through. I basically spent the last month going through all the audio files to organize everything. So then Tuesday night I sat down and started editing the film. I've got about the first 10 minutes finished. I'd say by the end of this weekend I'll have a really good chunk of the film put together. But my hope is that by the end of August, first week of September, I'll have a good assembly cut ready to go. And then, of course, Eric will take a look at it. He'll make any suggestions or whatever he has. And then we got to work towards sending it off for sound design, color grading. And then, of course, Joe
Or
Renzetti, he's doing the score for it. So we got to send it to him once we get a picture lock. That way he can sit down and go through it and compose.
So for people that are familiar with your work and obviously looking for the upcoming New Fear's Eve, where can people see what you're currently doing, what you've got coming up? Where are you available on social media, etc.?
Eric, I talked a lot. I'll let you take that one.
just because you probably don't want to. Are you just talking about to keep up with what's going on right now with us?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, I mean, we have bloodmoonpictures.com. We're getting ready to update that to keep people up to date with that. We have a page, PJ, it's New Fear's Eve. they can get to that through the. Do they have to be invited to that? They don't, do they?
No, it's we have an official Facebook thread group that you can get on, and we put we post a whole bunch of stuff in there, like from videos, behind the scenes photos, and stuff like that.
Yeah, they can add themselves to it, can't they?
Yeah,
They-
you can
they
go
ask
into the
to
group.
join.
It's public, so you can just join the group anytime.
Yeah. And then most of everything that we do is on our Facebook pages, PJ or I. And of course, then we do have a Blood Moon Pictures Facebook page. And pretty much any movie that we do, we have a page for that as well. But PJ kind of opened this up to anybody to join in and follow what's going on. And it's a good one to get to because it's got a lot of behind the scenes pictures and kind of follows up on stuff that's going on and what we're doing. And one of the conversations we just had earlier with a friend of ours that helps us with our web pages and gets our stuff out there. He's getting ready to put all of this that's going on with New Year's Eve on our webpage, bloodmoonpictures.com.
Well, we encourage everyone out there who is listening and everyone who's seen your prior films, definitely keep up with what you're doing now. You've got some great stuff, obviously, in the pipeline, and I'm sure you've got more to come. Do you guys have a moment off the air for us?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
As we close out real quick, let's take a look at the trailer, if that's all right with
everybody. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
And if you guys have anything to say about it, go ahead. I think I can share my screen here.
All right.
We'll just wait here silently.
Performance issues, I understand.
There we go.
There it is.
All right. Here we go.
In my defense, this is the earliest I've been late. Besides, I've got a really good excuse this time.
We already know about your botched vasectomy.
He did go to a general practitioner.
The price was right.
He had a coupon.
As you know, I do the end of the year corporate call.
I did not have a coupon.
Here's the long and the short of it. We're going to need to trim some fat around here.
What about tomorrow's New Year's Eve party? Cancel that.
I'm taking away people's jobs. I'm not going to take away their party. I'm not a monster.
Yeah, seriously, he's not like a conniving, motherfucking limp dick piece of shit asshole.
Yeah, there was a lot of specific in that.
Are you for real?
Mr. Dugan does not have a sense of humor.
Yeah, like that time last year that you joked there was an active shooter in the building.
That was not a joke. That was a drill. And we got to use the first aid kit, so it actually worked for the drill.
My resolution is to remain dick-free next year.
Weird. I had that same resolution.
Well, that confirms the rumors about you having no dick.
Party!
In an office.
Yeah, in an office!
There's no better way to describe what happened, but I think I was being stalked last night.
By someone in all black? Like a crow costume?
Me too. Only I wasn't stalked, I was chased.
We got a house of horrors in there. 3 to 4 dozen people dead. But there's no right way to say it. We got a serial killer on our hands.
Hey, buddy, you're not supposed to be in here this late. I don't know who you are. You have to come back during business hours.
I would encourage everyone to go seek the trailer out. That was stuttering a little bit on my end.
Yeah.
So
what if I told you that you can use motion array?
Thanks, motion array. Yeah, it was skipping on my end too. So I just want everybody to know that yes, the movie will skip that much.
Yeah.
It will. It will.
That's right. It's going to
Yeah.
freeze just when you're like, man, this is getting good. It's going to freeze up.
See,
We're coming out with a new genre of film.
The whole 126 page script is in there, but you only
Right.
get to see the 85.
That's right.
Right. That's
how
all
they
you
managed
need to
make
see.
that work. We want to thank everyone who stopped in tonight. We had a great time, of course, with everybody. We'll definitely have you guys back on, and just stick with us for a couple moments off the air.
Okay.
Everyone else will be back next week. We've got some great stuff coming. Possibly a very, very big guest. Not that PJ and Eric weren't big guests, but we've also
whatever.
He means a fat guest.
next
Yeah.
week is right. We've got someone with a not so bosh vasectomy coming on next week.
That
We want to thank
bastard.
everybody. Have a great night, and we will see everybody soon.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
all
having
so
us
much.
on. Appreciate it. Have a good